Before we do anything or say anything to you guys out there, Ken, what's going on with Facebook?
Oh, okay. For all you Facebookers out there.
Hi, guys.
Okay. A lot of you are kind enough to send your comments to us, and we encourage you to do that.
Like Pepper Jackie and Mad Max.
Like Pepper Jackie.
And Mike.
But what happens if you do not allow our platform to see your name? Then it comes across as Facebook user. And after that happens 5 or 6 times, we're like, meh. So we want to know who you are. You can see it on your end. We can't. So if you would just take a second, if you're watching us on Facebook, here's a link, StreamYard.com, Facebook. It's just going to have a little blue box that says, allow us to see your name. You click that, and now we return you to our regularly scheduled programming. So,
hey, Ron.
I have a feeling that there are going to be a lot of questions asked of our guests tonight, and rightfully so. So we want to make sure we can identify you.
Yes. And if you want to really, really notice, get your notice in chat, if you really want it to stand out, hit that subscribe button, and it makes your letters thicker. It's really an interesting technology that YouTube has there. Hit the subscribe button, and the letters in the comment section and your name gets thicker. Yeah. Just remember that. Good evening, everybody, and welcome.
Faces that pops up like this.
Exactly. The technology is amazing. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air Live, the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. We are simulcast with KGRADB.com, KGRA on Facebook, and on YouTube. And my name is George Lopez. I'm exhausted. Mr. Ken DaCosta in the horrible weather state of Rhode Island.
It's awful out here. It was cold. The sun was shining, and it was cold.
So,
I'm not used to this anymore.
No, and I'm not used to my weekend here. We had all the family come over from the west side of Florida to visit Pop today, an early Thanksgiving gathering. So we had the kids, the grandkids, and the great-grandkids over, all in the house together. So I spent the last 2 days getting the house cleaned and ready, and I did too much. And so I'm wiped out. So I apologize if I seem a little bit lethargic, a little slow in my responses tonight. I got my coffee here, but we will kick it in gear here in just a second because I know I'm excited. One of our dear, dear friends, Melissa Saint-Hilaire, is our guest tonight. We're going to be talking to her about possible home concoctions, witchcraft concoctions that I could use for my lower back.
Just everyday household items that you have hanging around can change your life, or not.
I don't think rat's paws and bat beaks are up in my.
You don't know that.
I'll take a look.
You don't know that.
We have to wait and see. But in any event, guys, we're happy that you guys joined us. I did say before, definitely hit that subscribe button. Don't forget also the thumbs up and the reminder bell for upcoming content, which at the top of the second hour, Ken will run you through what's going on this week. A little bit of a change of schedule with the holiday, but we'll keep you informed as the night goes on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this, Ken. And, we had a chance to talk to her earlier this week. Much more informal, but why don't you do the formal introductions for this evening?
Absolutely. And once again, Facebook users, do the right thing. I'm going to put it up there one more time. There you go.
There
Click
we are.
on that, and we can see your name. It's magic. All right. So our guest tonight, Melissa Saint-Hilaire.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Hi, Elise. Oh, Mary Beth. Our guest tonight, Melissa Saint-Hilaire, is a writer, a professional witch, and a psychic medium at the Green Man store in North Hollywood, California. She grew up actually in the backwoods of Massachusetts, had her first mediumship experience at the tender age of 3, began reading tarot cards at 12. I don't even want to tell you what I was doing at 12.
Jeez, I'm not saying.
No, you don't want to know. And has been mystified by the occult ever since, and she's going to share that with us tonight. She will share her experiences and insights into her fascinating lifestyle. So please, I know there's going to be a lot of questions. We'll intersperse. We'll talk to each other back and forth. We'll try to get to as many as we can during and maybe at a certain point of the show. But in any event, please welcome back our dear friend, live from California, Melissa Saint-Hilaire. Oh, jeez.
Boil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. That's our show for tonight. My goodness, Melissa.
She just described my weekend.
She just like comes out of the gate firing. This one does.
I had to do it. You know.
Yeah, I know.
Dispelling the myths. I had to show you the myth.
I know. But that's so you. So.
Don't forget, though, Ken, she's also 3 hours ago, I had that energy.
Right. So in the 3-hour time difference, somewhere around midnight tonight, I should basically kick off.
Yeah. It'll be happening at that point in time. Hi, Melissa. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Happy to be here.
Been keeping busy.
Oh yeah, trying. You know, I'm sort of actually just coming out of the busy period because, you know, October is the busiest time for all of us witches. So now I'm kind of like going into that, like, I'm going to chill out for a little while phase.
You get a little kooky, and for lack of a better term, when you're in October time frame, and yeah, you may wind up wearing the witch's hat or getting the word out there, what your background is, your experience is you get a little kookier with people when they discover who you are or what you can do with regards to the Halloween time frame, and they're a little bit weirder.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You know, I get weird comments all the time, you know, like I'll get, you know, comments telling me that I need to find Jesus. I'll get people accusing me of being a Satanist, you know, and like
woman needs Jesus.
Right. I posted something on TikTok recently where I was just doing like a little thing about Hecate, and someone came in and was like, "Oh, I love worshiping Satan too," and I'm like, "That's
wow,
that's not the same thing."
And we have a lot to talk about, don't we?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
The sad part about what the image of witches and witchcraft is in society, in social programming, hilariously enough, is the majority of what you look at when you see paranormal teams take their group pictures. They're all dark and they're all very goth in that sense. And that's the mindset half the time of what we expect when we're talking about people that study witchcraft. It's not the truth of it at all, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, all kinds of people practice witchcraft, you know, and there's all different types of witchcraft too. So there's like two things going on there. You know, you could be like, you know, at a kid's soccer game and someone sitting in the stands who looks like your quintessential, you know, 1980s soccer mom is at home, you know, practicing witchcraft. You know, it's, you know, and the teenage girl dressed all in black from head to toe and is a TikTok witch is also practicing witchcraft, you know. So we all look totally different. We all come in all different walks of life, and we all practice totally different ways. You know, in fact, I know a lot of actual Christian witches, which I find just totally fascinating. You know, they're able to blend those two worlds together and create something new out of it.
Now, that soccer mom who is practicing, is she putting curses on the other team?
Well, let's hope not, but she might be. It depends. Everyone has their own code of ethics.
When my kids were playing, there were some moms that I think were suspect. And now I'm starting to see the light. Now I understand those orange slices Those orange
Yes.
pieces they handed out.
But listen, I'm not going to name any names, but I have actually been asked to do spells against people, other people's kids. I say no because that's not how I play. But but no hate, no judgment, to each their own.
And you understand, though, you have, Ken, if you look at it this way, somebody in Vegas is probably putting these individuals to use. It's in putting a curse on a boxer or sporting event, things of that sort. So it is a strange thing, though. It does have this negative connotation about it, and taking it all the way back to the time of Salem. But where is it today in opposition to that, and how is it being brought more so out of the dark ages, where people can, other than when we're doing shows such as this, people can start to get more of an exposure of what witchcraft truly is?
Well, it's super trendy right now. You can find, there are so many freaking books out right now on witchcraft. It's pretty insane. And, there's a lot of witches on social media. Witch talk is hugely popular. Now, some of the new witches also get flack, just like the old witches got flack. Everybody is always judging us all the time. But, I think the nice thing about now, like, even though some might frown upon how trendy it is, the good thing from my perspective is representation. We are exposed to so many different paths. We can see that it's not just, hook noses and curses. It's also healing people. It's, nature witches. I have this dear friend named Natalie, and her whole thing is nature witchcraft. And, she makes these flower essences that, you're having a bad day and you have a little bit of a flower essence and you just start to be one with a blossom and feel so much better, And, I have another friend, Jackie, and she practices witchcraft, and she also does hypnotherapy. And, she sort of puts the two together and helps people to, maybe they're practicing the craft and they're finding that their spells aren't working and they're not, manifesting, because that's super popular right now. And, she can use hypnotherapy to help remove those blocks from people so that their magic is more powerful, So there's all these different really good, wonderful things that people are doing now with the craft.
We're talking about our friend Jackie Blue, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. She's been on with us before with you as well. So that is awesome. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do at this point in time. I'm going to take more Tylenol and put myself on a stretcher for a little bit, as Mr. Costa will take over and talk to you. I'll be back in just a little while.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Take care of yourself, George.
All
Self-care.
right, our guest this evening, Melissa Saint-Hilaire, American Witch. So I want to flesh that out a little bit, what you're just talking about. Some of the obstacles that you may have had to overcome when you decided that this is my path in life. So if you're a ghost hunter, it's probably the idea where, people roll their eyes at you, and that's okay, but it's got to be a little bit different and a little bit more personal for you, because you're talking about a belief system, right? And they're very powerful things, these belief systems. So when did you first decide to identify as a witch? And then when that happened, there was certainly maybe some type of coming out phase. And what did you have to deal with in terms of, getting through that and just saying, my life, I'm living it, and this is the path I chose?
Oh gosh, good question. So when I was a kid, I felt like a witch, honestly. I didn't call myself a witch so much, but not out loud in public. In my own mind, I thought of myself as a witch when I was really little, because, my grandma, she used to tell me what different plants did. She knew all the properties of plants. She'd be like, chew on this bark and it'll make your headache go away and things like that, So, and she would talk about fairies and fairy magic and things like that. She didn't call herself a witch, though, I have to say. But she totally was one. And she also had the gift of prophecy and divination, which, again, she didn't use those words, but she just knew things that were going to happen before they happened. So, like, I knew really, really early on that I was a little bit different than other people. And then when I went to school, you know, I had a very tough time in school because I could like sense everybody's feelings all the time. And I was very self-conscious as a result and terrified of public speaking. Like, if you told me back then I'd be doing something like this now, I'd be like, you are totally insane. There's no way. And, you know, I kind of took this path like in secret for a long time. You know, I'm in college, I would do spells for my friends, and it would be like in, you know, hush, hush. You know, at one of my birthdays after I moved out here, I invited a bunch of girlfriends to the Chateau Marmont to do a seance.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's big time. You're right.
I know. I rented a cottage and I did the seance. You know, I was like, let's, you know, talk to the dead celebrities. But I still didn't like, right? And I still didn't like call myself a medium or a witch, but I was doing all the things.
I'm sure you must have got Belushi's attention there at least, right?
Well, I think
there's a story. Okay.
There's a story because so, you know, we pulled out the Ouija board because of course we did. Yeah. And I'm sitting there doing my thing, like kind of theatrical, like I'm much better at it now. Back then I didn't know, I wasn't an expert yet. I was just kind of a dabbler. But I was doing the thing and I was invoking the spirits. And then all of a sudden there was this loud clap of thunder, a flash of lightning, and all of the lights went out in the entire hotel.
You sold it, girl.
Right?
You sold it.
My friends were like, okay, that's it. We're done.
My former friends said that.
Exactly. I haven't seen many of them since, to be honest. Yeah. But, and that's kind of something that does happen, when I did decide to start like coming out as this, because that's the other thing too. A lot of my friends told me I was a witch and a psychic and a medium well before I ever like used those terms myself. And I think it was because I was afraid everyone was going to say I was crazy. Like it's not possible. You're just making it up. It's all in your head, things like that. And, I even though I wasn't raised religious, half of my family is very religious. They're Catholic and they kind of think witchcraft is of the devil and things like that. Mm. So, there was a lot of fear for me in coming out of the broom closet. But, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, Renee Watt, which I don't know if anybody knows her, but
we know Renee.
Yeah, she is an astrologer and she's just awesome, very sweet. And she was like, I think you should do public readings. And she invited me to the Midsummer Scream to go and do like my first public. I had been doing, now granted, I've been doing readings since I was like 12, but privately. So this was the first time I was like with strangers. And I thought to myself, like, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. I'm terrified, but I'm just going to do it. And it went awesome. I had a great time. Shortly after that, the Green Man hired me. Of course, they interviewed me first. And that was also nerve wracking. I had to give the owner a mediumship reading.
Well, they have quite a stable of contributors there.
They do. Their psychics are top notch. Everyone is tested. Everyone is vouched for. They don't just let anybody walk in off the street and work there. So it was fun though. It was scary, but fun. And I've been working there ever since. And, I realized if I'm going to make a career at this, I'm going to have to post about it on social media. And as soon as I do that, it's going to be on Facebook. And then as soon as I do that, everyone I went to high school is going to know that.
They do.
Right.
I've spoken to a few of them. They know. Hey, what I wanted to ask you, how do you delineate? Because we all know about psychics, physical mediums, psychic mediums, and so forth. How do you delineate and say, I believe I'm a witch? Is it all the same soup, or is there some kind of, like, how does that go? I'm also this.
Right. Well, for me, it's all the same soup. But I also recognize and acknowledge that that's not the case for many others, because there are, Christian mediums out there, Catholic mediums, things like that. So I think for me, with witchcraft, I had this sort of realization. I took some classes at the Green Man years ago, and I started doing some spells myself. And I realized that I could make things happen. And, they were little things. I wasn't like, it wasn't massive, like big, massive changes. But so for one example is when this is like a few years ago, I wanted to buy a house. And I did all this research and I concocted a spell to get a house, which I didn't think I was ever going to be able to afford my own house because, the housing market is bananas in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this spell, and like within a couple of weeks after I did the spell, I was closing on a house. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? So I started doing more and more. And then I started doing spells for friends, and it started working for them. And it was along that path that I started to realize that there's something to this. It's not just aesthetics, that if you put the time in, if you put the research in, you can affect change. And, the thing for me specifically with witchcraft, with being a witch, is that you don't just accept the hand that fate deals
So
you.
is it about the power of intention, or is it something beyond that?
Well,
Because when you're doing spells, it's just more than just sitting here asking the universe for something and focusing and concentrating on it. You're taking more aesthetic act for it, right? So
right. Yeah, so there's a couple things to it. Some people actually believe that all spells is intention. And there are the Christian witches would say that spells and prayers are the same thing. But for me, I think of it more in terms of spirit craft. I will use my intention, but I also like to use the energy of the universe, energy of things around me, whether it's earth, air, fire, water, or if I decide to align with the energy of a deity, so it might be like, oh, I want to do a love spell. So I'm going to focus and channel the energy of Aphrodite and pull that into me. So it's not just sitting and going, make this thing happen. It's also sort of using the forces of nature around you to bring them into being. And then also, if you work with spirits, if you're a medium, and which I actually kind of believe everybody can be a medium, personally, that's my belief. But
we're gonna get to that one.
Yeah. But I like to work with the spirits. I like to ask for their help with things. And they love to help. They're just sort of floating around watching us, waiting for us to ask a question anyway. So
Right.
why not?
Well, I know you've hosted things like psychic development classes, or I think you term them a circle.
Yes.
Going into that, I want to tell us a little bit about that, because the prevailing theory is that, I don't know why we keep popping on and off.
Yeah.
The prevailing theory on that is that we all have innate ability within us. So how does someone develop and hone them, and what that require on the part of the subject that you're working with? There's got to be halfway type of thing. So what's their responsibility, your responsibility, all come together.
Right. Well, there's a belief that, well, first of all, we should delineate psychic and medium, because, psychic is sort of an umbrella term for all the things. So a tarot reader, a bone thrower. Am I breaking up at all?
No, we're just everyone. We buffer and do weird things. We're used to it.
That's the spirits messing with us.
I'm on with that, sure.
But yeah, so psychic is sort of an umbrella term for all the things. So whether you're a tarot reader, a bone thrower, a medium, rune caster, all of those things sort of fall under that terminology. But lots of times when people use the term psychic, what they mean is intuitive, which is why when I give in my services, I offer intuitive readings or mediumship readings, and they're two different things. So intuitive that's more in the province of the clairs. So that's like clairvoyance, clairalience, clairgustance, clairaudience, which basically those just mean like, you hear things, you feel things, you know things. And it's, if you could put almost all of that under the term telepathy, it's sort of like reading other people. It's reading their energy, knowing what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what's going on with them. Sometimes with psychic abilities, you can also project into the future or the past, and that sort of becomes fortune telling, where you can sense the energies around a person, and then you can sort of map out where those energies are going and seeing what's going to happen. Now with mediumship, of course, mediumship is more talking to spirits, so it's under the umbrella of psychic, but it's very specifically, you hear spirits, see spirits, etc. Of course, psychic and medium, intuitive and medium goes hand in hand, but they are different. There is a difference. And, the reason why I believe that everybody has this ability is because if you think about it, everybody gets feelings, everybody gets vibes, everybody can, walk into a room and all of a sudden be like, oh, something is off here, and then also lots of people will have dreams about the deceased, or they'll, I get people who want readings all the time who are like, I keep smelling my grandfather's tobacco smoke and I think he's around, he is. So that's why I think we're all able to tap into it, because we're humans, it's in our DNA, it's in our bones, but not all of us are born with the, how do I put this? It's like, running a marathon or drawing a picture, we can all do it, but we can't necessarily all do it well. And
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's where training comes in. And, that's where I'll have, my classes, my circles, as I like to call them, and I gather people around, and I sort of take the time with each individual to help bridge the gap between their innate ability and what their potential is. I try to see what are their stumbling blocks, what's holding them back, and how do we burst down those obstacles so that they can, achieve a real true connection with a spirit, with their grandmother or what have you.
Yeah. Speaking of connections, we beg your indulgence tonight because I know that off we're both. There might be a lot of regions are going through some things. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the connection on our end. We just being taxed a little bit. There's a lot going on there. So we apologize in advance. I have one more question before we get to questions, before we get to George. So the other thing I wanted to ask, talk about going to these different places for readings. I'm talking about not necessarily just someone comes to a little shop, but along the lines of what there has a disclaimer that it's entertainment purposes. So to kind of dispel, is that strictly a legality, or is or is there a bit of morality in there as well? And what I mean by that is some people suddenly can't function with visiting psychic. And happens with some of the more unscrupulous members of your community is that people will be taken advantage. We all know the stories of people who lost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, their obsession with it. But I think people see that immediately, that triggers something in their mind that, oh, okay, this is just a kind of a con. It's for entertainment only. People see that. Could you run us through what that actually means before people just turn tail and run away?
Well, with the Green Man store specifically, they have to state that for entertainment purposes only. It's a legal thing, strictly a legal thing.
Right.
And the other thing too is, we are actually encouraged to not try to tell people's futures because, it's nothing is concrete, nothing is set in stone. And also, and I tell this to all of my clients because all of my clients want me to predict their future. I happen to be weirdly good at it. And so I do it even though I'm not supposed to, but I make sure to tell all of my clients, I'll say, just the simple fact of me telling you what I can see happening can change that future. It's every,
Ooh.
you know what I mean? It's in the way
Okay.
that I picture it as like, it's a stream running through a forest. And, and some people have said it might not be psychic at all. It might be, a Sherlock Holmes thing of just, being able to really quickly observe a bunch of things and figure out the logical conclusion. It's probably a bit of both, but, someone will ask me something and I'll get all this information. I'll tap into my feelings. I'll talk to my spirits, which I get information from them as well. And I'll, see this stream cutting through the woods and I'll say, okay, well, I can see this possible. If you do this, I can see this outcome. If you do this other thing, I can see this other outcome. But bear in mind that I can only see so far ahead. And if you look at any life path, the further that you go out, the more possibilities there are, until there are so many possibilities, it would be impossible to try to pick every single one out. So, you can't really see, and then there's also the unknown, because there are things that for whatever reason, spirit or whomever doesn't want us to see something. And that's the law. That's the tree falling in the forest and cutting off the stream and then completely changing the course, and for, and the other thing too, why we have to say entertainment purposes only is because as of right now, we can't really prove anything. I mean, when I do mediumship readings, I like to do evidentiary readings. So when I first talk to a person and they say, oh, I want to get in touch with so-and-so, sometimes they don't even tell me who it is and I have to try to figure it out. I prefer to, that can be a fun game, but it's, it's faster and easier if I'm given a name,
Sure.
But, I like to check in with that spirit first and try to get something, like, in, some cases I'll just see like, something like red flannel and I'll be like, I'm seeing red flannel and I don't know what this means. And the person's like, oh, my dad's favorite jacket was this red flannel jacket and he wore it all the time. And I'm like, oh, good. Okay. Boom. I've got the right person. I try really hard to make sure that my clients know that I'm as authentic as I possibly can be. I don't make up anything. And if I don't get a connection, maybe I'm trying to connect with something and I'm just getting nothing. I'm going to tell my client that like, sorry, I'm getting nothing. You can refund your money or we could do something else, at the time.
Sure.
So
speaking of connections, I know Melissa and I tag back and forth here.
Yeah.
Nothing on our end. I say it might just be internet by getting a little bit, or maybe it's just night. Don't know, but we'll find out. George is blinking too. We just ask you to bear because we're going to have a great hang in there. George, I wanted to get some questions here. Come in here. We have one. Alice in Wonderland would like to say, I think many associate the wit coven. Would Melissa say an older perception of the practice, or is it still relevant? Good question.
I'd say it's still relevant. I'm not currently in a coven. I was in a coven. It didn't go spectacularly well. So,
Right.
so I got out. But I, right now,
So you didn't know the secret handshake. Is that it?
right? Yeah. I think also I'm a wicked introvert, and I kind of like a solitary life. So I'm just like #solitary witch. But there's nothing wrong with covens. They're still super prevalent. It is an older concept. Lots of the reasons why it would be an older concept is because it was for safety in numbers. Especially people are being hunted and killed for being a witch. You can hide in groups.
Okay, understood. We're going to save some of these. Maybe one more, a short, quick one. Jax would like to know, a witch not only receives ends met. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So yeah, we can project our thoughts or feelings or what have you into other people. And it's super fun, but with consent only.
Well, that's good to know. On that note, before I turn into something here, I am going back out of here and leave it to my esteemed co-host George. Thanks, sir.
Well, I think after a certain temperature, when it goes down in Rhode Island, the entire state shuts down.
Oh, is that what happened?
Right now with a connection. Very, very special guest tonight, Melissa Saint-Hilaire. Just some very light, simple questions for you. Does God exist?
Wow. That's oh my goodness. Let's see. Which one?
Well, that's the question. I'm a man of faith. I'm not a man of religion. I think that that is the diversity in society globally. But faith seems to be a constant. But that faith also seems to be something that can be influenced and can be manipulated. You're talking about ethereal creatures in the practice of witchcraft that could, without question, be another design by God or by a greater power. How does that incorporate, or is that something that always sits in the back of your mind, not only for yourself, but even for the people that you are working with?
Wow. Well, gosh. Okay.
And if you can answer it in one sentence.
I know,
No, I'm
right?
kidding. I'll go ahead.
No, I'm like scrolling through my brain because I'm trying to figure out like how far back to go in my life to answer this question, because I'm going to be honest. So I went through a period of time where I was a little bit of an atheist for a period of time. I had a lot of bad stuff had happened in my life. I lost all my faith, and
Sure.
so I decided nothing is real except for this solid table and whatever. And I lived in that mode for a while, and then magic enter magic. And my life started to change, and then also enter mediumship. And when I even though I saw spirits as a kid, I never understood that I could converse with them. And when I started to sort of train my mediumship so that it wasn't just this free floating weird stuff that would happen to me periodically in haunted buildings or whatever, when I started to realize I could pull them to me and talk to them anywhere, I realized, well, maybe I can ask the spirits the big questions. So that's what I did. And I asked my grandmother and my grandfather, I asked, is God real? And their answer was yes. But they also said, but it's also nothing that you can comprehend. And they said, and it's also nothing that's written in any book. And it's so much, it's so much bigger and grander than all the little splinters that, we humans try to like label and hold on to and twist and manipulate and use, And the way that my grandmother showed it to me was like a prism. And let me see if you're gonna hear a bunch of stuff fall.
Ooh, visual aids. We got visual aids. All right.
All right. So you imagine a prism, And, you know, the prism is God. The prism is the universe, the cosmos, everything that ever was and everything that ever will be and everything that is. And all the little facets, when you shine a light into a prism and little different colors shoot off, each little color is a different God, a different energy, a different spirit. So, you know, something maybe pink and soft and loving shoots off, and, you know, that's Aphrodite. And, you know, something protective shoots off, and that's, you know, Hecate or Hecate, however you want to pronounce it. You know, it's everything is everything kind of a thing. So in that regard, you know, all religions, I'm using quotes because anyway, but like
I'm
all
glad you put that away. I almost got hypnotized for a second.
that's my next trick. No. But, you know, all religions are true. All gods are true. And no religions are true and no gods are true. Do you know what I mean? So it's because it's so much more than we can comprehend that we can't really put a name to it. We can't really say for sure what it is. All we know is that there is something out there that's bigger than us.
But it's almost all encompassing is what, from a witchcraft perspective, you can't dismiss one thing because it is a multiple.
Yes.
Just like that prism. It could be shooting from any direction. As far as the capability of the individual, where that is coming from, where it's originating from, is anybody's guess.
Exactly. And to address that question that just popped up there about monotheism, now that depends on your perspective. Because if all of the gods and all of the spirits and all the orishas and all, you know, all the fairies and everything, if it's all one, if all of that is one, then monotheism is true. But if your view of monotheism is only Yahweh or the Krishna God or Allah,
only, yes,
then
which tends to be the trend.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's take it from theology to science, and let's talk about something called genetic memory. And this is something that has always really kind of perked me up in a discussion because of the possibilities behind that. Now, we've used that dynamic when it came to exorcisms. And is it the possibility that when that priest is speaking Latin, that there is a genetic memory inherent in us that triggers things off to help during that exorcism, to help purge that invader? Is something similar to that in the practices, not necessarily the wording, but in the practices of what they do in witchcraft, that genetically, in that genetic memory, something is triggering in those individuals? You know, we use the examples about people who are superstitious or people who feel like they have had a curse put on them. If they are aware of that curse being cast upon them, there could be a genetic memory fear that allows that to ignite within them, and it's almost a causality. Would you also attribute that genetic memory, if it really is something that could be identified, truly identified in what it is, the work that you're doing, to be part of what enhances to that receiver what it is that you are projecting?
Whew, wow. Okay, I have two things quick to say. One, why do demons know Latin? This has always puzzled me. You know what I mean? Why does Latin work? You know,
they have genetic memory maybe too. Who knows?
Right. You know, any entity that needs to be exorcised is probably eons old. And when did they learn Latin? You know, but so
rather than Greek,
right? Exactly. Or you know, any you know, Mesopotamian or something. You know, there's like, you know, languages that we aren't even aware of anymore. They're so ancient. You know. So that's one thing that's always sort of puzzles me with the Latin thing, you know.
Well, keep in mind, a lot of those languages are not a spoken word anymore. Right.
Yes,
so exactly. There's no way to translate that.
Yeah, we have no idea how it would even sound, you know.
But continue.
So that's one thing. And then now with the genetic memory, so I want to share, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but I'm going to share something with you that I find fascinating. So years ago, I went to my friend Patty Negri. She was hosting a seance, and I went to it. And during the seance, she kept, I was a guest, like I didn't pay to be there. So I was trying to just sort of like, blend in the background, and she kept saying, there's a Willem here. There's a Willem here for someone. And she's looking around the table and she keeps looking at me. And I'm like, don't look at me. I didn't pay for the show. I'm just a guest. And, but I know deep down that this Willem person she's talking about is for me. So I say to her, I was like, it might be me. I know that I have some Williams in my ancestry. And I know that in early New England, they would often pronounce William as Willem, instead of Elm Street, things like that, because it's a strange pronunciation. So she's like, yes, it's you. And she tells me that this person in my ancestry had been hanged for being a witch. And I'm like, I've looked over the Salem stuff. I know I'm not a descendant of any of the Salem witches. So I'm thinking this is just baloney, But oddly enough, my whole life, I have had this weird fear of losing my breath, of choking to death. It's just a phobia. I can't even swallow large pills because I have this weird phobia. Now, and I'm talking like, ever since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I would demand to get penicillin in that nasty pink liquid because I didn't want to swallow pills. And, I was tiny. Why would I have this fear? Where would it come from? Nobody taught it to me. Right. So then I call up my mom after this seance and I go, Mom, this weird thing happened, and I tell her about William being hanged and all that nonsense. I'm like, isn't that crazy, stupid nonsense? And my mom goes, actually, it's 100% true.
Wow.
And she said, your ancestor he had already had a ton of kids, so that's why we all exist. But he was hanged in Boston, Massachusetts by Cotton Mather, who was a famous witch hunter. And he was accused of being a witch and spectrally raping somebody or something. I mean, it was just a, trigger warning. I apologize, but it's a horrible thing, And the other weird thing that Patty had said to me was that everyone in my line had the ability, that they weren't just labeled witches because they were, pointing fingers and trying to kill people, that they actually did have abilities, that they actually really were witches or psychics or whatever they were. And she said that every single line had to suppress those abilities because of this genetic fear of being targeted and killed. And that I was the generation that was going to break that generational curse or whatever, or generational memory, whatever it is, genetic memory. So maybe there's some truth to that.
It's, they've had experiments with animals with pheromones, and also, that fear factor comes into play, doing things over and over again as they go down, each generation. All of a sudden it's inherent for them to do something like that. So it is a timed lesson that has been instilled through your genes, each and every single one of your lineage. I mean, that to me is terrifying. To try and explain why, whatever my phobias may be, or anybody else that's out there, where it originates from, and is it deeper than just a personal experience, something that has been ingrained in you, in your DNA. Be fascinating to see as we go forward, more people that we talk to within the field that might be able to, I guess, concur what it is that we're trying to look at here. The possibilities are endless, to say the least. I'm going to have Ken come on in just a minute here because we've got a ton more questions that are building very, very fast from chat. But along the lines of what we're talking about here, where we have an opportunity to learn from this, are you learning to cope with that kind of a phobia, knowing, especially when you're hearing it from your family, that this goes back in history? You're stepping forward and taking that dive off the diving board and saying, I've got to figure it out if this is going to be something to contend with, or the maturity of understanding this is a different day and age for us. I'm not going to be hung over this. But there's some crazy people out there, and you never know what could occur, even with a client. People, it's a scary scenario. So taking that leap of faith takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had, I don't give like my address out to clients, if they want to send me something, they have to send it to the Green Man.
Wisely so.
Yeah. And I have to sort of, kind of keep a low profile because of that, because there are some, wackadoodles out there who,
by the way, we are now monetized. So I think the highest super chatter who donates tonight, I will email you Melissa's home address. So just letting you know. Melissa, go ahead, continue.
But yeah, no, we do have to be careful. I don't even want my neighbors to know that I'm a witch. You know what I mean? I don't want anyone to get any ideas. And we also do live, even though maybe a few years ago, I would think it was safe to sort of, come out as a witch. But nowadays there's some, some people have some really strange ideas and conspiracy theories out there about what people are up to. I've had people message me on Instagram and tell me that I'm drinking baby's blood or something. And I'm like, I don't even eat meat. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like, that's not happening, So, they do.
Jeez.
Yeah, there's some weird beliefs out there. So we still have to protect ourselves. I mean, at least we can practice lawfully in the United States of America. I don't know about, I know there are other countries. I have clients in other countries who have to hire me to do spells for them because they can't legally and lawfully do a spell in their own country.
Welcome to the 21st century and all of its evolved people. Unbelievable. Ken, if you want to come in and hit one, maybe two more questions before we go to break, sir.
I just wanted to say before we do that, whatever your beauty routine is, whether drinking blood or whatever, you look fabulous for 200.
Radiant.
Looks fabulous for 287 years old.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, let's take a couple more questions here. Elise Carlson from our show Panoramic Perspectives. This is something I was going to touch on, but does your mom have abilities? I've always heard there is a segment of this that says these kind of abilities skip a generation. Is that true in your case, or can you put that to rest?
I would say that there is truth. That there is truth to it. It's skipping a generation. But here's the thing. I don't know if it's so much that it skips a generation insofar as they don't have gifts, as much as it is they don't recognize their gifts. Because I know that my mom has gifts because I've seen her predict things. But the problem with my mom is that she doubts herself all the time and she second guesses herself. And she's also a worrywart. So, she's...
Is that all considered sort of a block?
Yes, absolutely. She blocks herself all the time. And she's also terrified of people thinking she's crazy. And, that's also a block because you kind of have to I had to learn to just embrace the crazy. People are, and who cares what other people think? As long as you're living your life and you're happy and you're not hurting anyone,
Or find your equal crazy.
Right. Exactly.
Like us.
We're onto something. Let's hit another one here. We got about 4 minutes. Mike Pelletier, question: the evil eye ensnares and traps bad energy. Does it require any kind of maintenance, clearing, or charging?
Ooh, good one.
That's a good question. I don't know if so. Okay, the evil eye originates in the Mediterranean, so in Turkey, Italy, and places like that. And I honestly don't know off the top of my head if in antiquity the ancients felt that they needed to be recharged. I do know that in modern witchcraft, we would recharge, we would cleanse them, recharge them, etc. Because, it's just like with my little spirit that I'm gonna my little spirit trap crystal here, you know, over time, there's a belief that they get full, you know, and if they're, you know, once they're full, you know, they need to sort of be cleansed and recharged so they can continue to actually work.
Yep.
You know, there's also an idea too of, how long do you want to trap a spirit for? Is it really fair to, you know, just because a negative spirit floats into your space and bothers you, is it fair to trap that spirit for all eternity? Or is it better to just go bring it outside, release it to the full moon or whatever, and let it float on and do its thing as long as it doesn't come back to you? You know what I mean? So personally, I would definitely cleanse it and recharge it.
Yeah, there are two schools of thought on that, because as I see it, spirits and ghosts are separate, and spirits have free will. So they can come in visitation and come and go as they please. That's just my particular opinion of it. So the idea of releasing or spirits that are entrapped, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but probably less than people who do those things want us to believe. Because I've always thought, who are we to like kick a ghost out or banish it or whatever the case may be, especially if it's benevolent and it's relatively harmless. And you have to make a decision. You either find your peace with it, you coexist, or, you know, immediately I want this thing gone. And it just seems to me that I guess both things can be correct. But I think that we're fed that a little bit too much, because if there's free will, it just stands to reason that they're not here all the time. They may be all around us, but in a specific location, maybe on an anniversary, or when they're, for lack of a better word, summoned or called upon. We may not hear them, but they're there on the other side going, what do you want?
Unfortunately, we are not free. We do have to pay the bills, which means we have to go to break at this time. When we get to the other side, we got a lot more questions still for our very special guest, the American Witch, Melissa Saint-Hilaire. Guys, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We're back on the other side. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. See you in a minute. I think Bill Forte fell asleep. Ken, you want to hit it?
Bill, are you there?
Hello. Where'd the Bill?
Hello.
Damn.
There you go. That'll do it. Bill?
Yeah.
Bill?
Okay, I'm going to find it.
Well, this is awkward.
Yeah, intro, countdown. Here we go.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you'd like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
All right, guys, welcome back to the second half of our show. Quick, important emergency announcement. We've not been able to reach Bill Forte. We do believe that he may have become hypnotized from the prison ball that Melissa was dangling earlier.
You're all under my spell now.
So
Yeah, no kidding.
I will, Ken, while we continue with the questions, because again, we've got them fast and furious in there, I'm going to go back off camera and see if I cannot locate Bill Forte via phone.
Okay, we'll do. All right, let's get to some of these then. Our very faithful listener, Pepper Jackie. How do you train people with mediumship? Do you use books? Or maybe do you recommend reading to them? Maybe there's two parts to that.
Yeah, I do use books. I use a lot of tools actually to train people. It's best in person. I do Zoom classes, but I prefer to do in-person classes, and I prefer to do a series and break down different aspects. You know, the first thing I try to do is teach people how to meditate, because that's really the best way to get in touch with their own abilities, is to learn to just be quiet, and be still and listen. And then I'll take them through the different things, like teaching them how to differentiate their clairs and get in touch with them, how to see auras, because that's a huge pathway towards opening up your abilities. Mm-hmm. And I use books. I don't know if you can see all the books behind me, but most of these are mediumship up here. So I use, I'm a book nerd. So
yeah, there you go.
Myself too. You know, I didn't have anybody to teach me this stuff. You know, I had like a couple of friends who could, you sort of steer me in directions, but I trained myself. And when I started teaching classes, it was because the classes I created were the ones that I wished I could have taken early on in my career, you know?
Mm-hmm. Understood. Let's have another one, Joe. Back to Joe Fox. I'm sure this covers a lot that you get from people. How do you feel about manifesting? More exactly, manifesting money. After all, money is energy, right?
Yes, money is energy. Manifesting is such a strange thing, because the word itself has some negative origins, like manifest destiny and colonization and things like that. So, I'm not like a huge fan of the word. I use it myself. The reason why I use it is, especially on social media, is because it is an instantly recognizable term of something that one can do. People know what you're doing when you say manifest, but we never used that term in the 90s. We just did money spells or luck spells or, whatever. But I have no problem with it. I know in certain circles that would be considered low magic, because you're just doing something, you're just trying to get something,
right.
Physical, as opposed to high magic, which is, empowering yourself and becoming a better person and more authentic and things like that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with either one. I do a blend of both. But
I think it's that intention again, where you're putting out something into the universe that will come back to you
Yes.
twofold.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
know, are you a believer in karma?
Yes, but I'm more of a believer in the Eastern philosophy of it versus how the Western has sort of altered what karma means. And I'm certainly not an expert on the Eastern philosophy of it, but from my understanding, and listeners feel free to correct me, but from my understanding, it's that, we build karma through our lifetime, both good and bad, or negative and positive, whatever label you want to give it. And so that karma builds over many lifetimes. And, if you've done a lot of really terrible things in your life, then you might come back as a cockroach, but if you've done a lot of really good things, then you might ascend and be a spirit guide or something, or another, so, karma to be, feels more like the balance of your life. I picture, the Egyptian god holding the scale and, balancing, and not so much with the idea of like, oh, I cut somebody off in traffic and now I'm going to stub my toe,
Right. Yeah, it's kind of tough to reconcile sometimes with me, the idea of reincarnation, because when we are contacting spirits who may have lived in a location 200 years ago by the same name, and they have total awareness of who we are and where they are at that particular time, they obviously haven't undergone a transition. So sometimes when people talk about past lives, reincarnation, I mean, I'm an empty vessel when it comes to that. I will listen and learn as much as I can, but sometimes I have a hard time reconciling that because, by the same token, then we talk about people who can't move on. So those things constantly are sort of at odds with each other, but I guess that's the whole idea of what we do. Answers that, or questions that just raise more questions.
Right. It's interesting because, I've found myself constantly puzzling. This is how I spend my time. I'll just sit for 3 hours and go, is reincarnation real?
Yeah.
And the place where I've sort of landed, and of course it changes, and every time I, get more or new information, my view is going to change because I'm very open to, I don't like fixed ideologies. I like to continuously change what I think about things based on new information.
Yeah.
And where I've sort of landed with the reincarnation thing is, because, it's hard for me to completely dismiss it because there are such ancient societies who totally believe in it and have believed in it for thousands of years. So to dismiss it doesn't seem totally right to me. But then there's whole other practices like ancestral worship, where they don't believe in reincarnation because they believe that their ancestors are always on the other side and can be reached for all eternity.
Right.
And so I asked my grandmother, who's on the other side, I was like, is reincarnation real? Like, what's the story there? And she gave me a very strange answer that I haven't told many people, but I'm willing to share it. But she basically said that it's all true. It's there's different, like there's a hierarchy to the other side, that it's not simply you've died and then boom, you're a spirit. That there's all these sort of phases that one has to go through. And of course, when you talked about there's ghosts and then there's spirits, exactly, there are, in witchcraft world we'll call them shades. Those are people who have passed away. They haven't sort of embraced the fact that they've died. They've gotten stuck here. Maybe it was a traumatic event. Maybe it was energy stuck in a house or something. And they can stay there. That energy could stay there for all eternity, and they don't never seem to get a chance to reincarnate because they haven't even accepted the fact that they've died. They're just replaying some event forever. And then you have those who are prepared for death and ascend. And then within ascension, there's different levels. My grandmother, pointed out to me that some ascend and they become spirit guides or just ancestors, and that's where they want to stay. That's what they want to be. They don't want to come back. They want to help their legacy. They want to stay as long as they can in that realm. And then she told me that that within death, there's another death. And so the spirits can die. And when the spirits die, they're transcended, and that they don't even really totally know what happens then. They don't really understand transcension so much. They just know that there's another death within death. And at that point it breaks down. Is that then reincarnation, or is it something else that we can't even comprehend? You know what I mean?
Well, that speaks to an age-old question. As we pass on, do we retain consciousness and awareness and memories and an awareness of our total self? And it would seem to be that we do in some regard, because again, we go back to free will and choice. Like, I have whatever form I'm in, whether it's energy, whatever the case may be, there are choices that we can make. So it's fascinating. I want to take one more before I move on to talk a little bit about spells. And this is Erin Bush. Hi, Melissa. What is your favorite way to ground and protect your energy? My favorite question, as I always learn something new. Erin is coming into her own for her own abilities as well. We know Erin. So what would you tell her in that regard?
Okay, well, my favorite way to ground is nature. You know, I like to get outside. I like to kick off my shoes. I like get my feet in dirt and grass. I like to hold on to a tree. And if the bigger the tree, the better, because those roots just go so far down deep into the earth. I mean, that's the most ultimate grounding that you could possibly get, you know. Mm-hmm. If I can't for some reason get outdoors, which, you know, sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where that's not possible, then iron. You know, and I'll keep that one's not iron, but bad example because my iron one is tucked away. But I'll keep little keys and things like that around that are iron. So if I need to, quickly tap into that energy, I grab it and I hold on to it and protect myself that way, or ground myself that way. Mm-hmm. Now for protection, I do a few different things for protection. One, I'm also a Reiki master, so it's a level 3 Reiki. And so I'll create a Reiki box, and it's this whole thing where you go around and you put the symbols in different directions, and you kind of like put yourself in a bubble. And then I follow that up with something that is a ceremonial practice, which is the LBRP, or the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And it's kind of similar to a Reiki box insofar as you go in each direction and you create a symbol of a pentagram, and you say these different words, and then you call for God, names for God, and then you call on archangels to surround you and protect you and keep you safe. So those are two ways that that I deal with protection. I feel like I need something besides, myself, or a talisman or something. Right.
I have, because I loaded these, I want to show them. This is Melissa in pictures, first of all. She is Patronus. There's doing her Harry Potter thing, right?
Yeah, that was before, I have to say, I knew about the author. I won't get into details on that.
Yeah, I know all the details. I know what you mean. And then again, she made a pilgrimage to the motherland.
Yes.
Salem, Massachusetts. I wanted you to tell me a little bit about what you're doing here, because I see the stones on the ground.
Yes.
And I know that there's something about this path, or it's not a maze, obviously, but there's something about this path. Can you tell us a little bit about this practice? Because I'm curious about that.
Sure. Yeah. So this is in Casadega, Florida, which is a spiritualist camp. I've been there a few times, and I've learned some stuff there. Spiritualism is, of course, the sort of religious practice side to mediumship. And what this is the labyrinth. And there's, different people have different ideas about what the labyrinth is. But for me, it's about meditation. It's about, you start on the outside and you walk the labyrinth, and it curls and curls and curls until you get into the center. And then you continue walking until it curls and curls and curls and brings you back out. So for me, it's sort of like taking the time to be quiet to go in nature, and then to go within yourself and connect with your innermost, truest self. And, as within, so without, as above, so below,
So
it's,
below, right?
yeah, it's that sort of thing.
Okay, that's cool. And then this is pretty creepy. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go to this one. What are you doing here?
Well, so there I went to Paris. It was my first time ever going.
The catacomb.
Yes, and I was all by myself, and nobody wanted to go with me. And I was like, "Oh, screw you
I
guys."
wonder why.
I wanted to go. I wanted to commune with the dead. So I head down there, and so this is a shot of me with a bunch of the, it's filled with bones and skulls, and I don't know. I'm weird. I like stuff like that. But they speak to you. They whisper. There's very strange energy down there. It's so bombastic. It just wraps around you, and I found myself, you're with a group, so you're not alone, but then I got separated. So there's one group ahead of me and another group behind me, and I was by myself at one point, and there was this dark little narrow pathway like off to the side, and I was being like lured over there. And so I kind of get over there, and all of a sudden I got chills from head to toe. I heard whispering. I heard my name being called. Now my last name is Saint-Hilaire. I am French, so there's a connection, French connection. So and then all of a sudden I started to feel like I was going to fall asleep, and I had to kind of like snap myself out of it and like run away to go find the rest of the group. So it's wicked haunted and very cool. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I mean, that's a definite bucket list place. Love to see it. Another $64,000 question is to ask you about the process of spells. Okay,
Yes.
and specifically how this is done on an individual basis for someone who it's you. How just a question of that person asking for one, or is there an assessment done where you might suggest, okay, this is the way you want to go? And I want to put something up here because you make something called charm bags.
Yes.
Okay, and here's an example of one. And I don't know what the markings are. I know all markings are unique to whatever it is that you're trying to produce there. So tell us a little bit about that whole process. I come in, I'm looking for a spell, or you decide to suggest that you create one for me, or how does that go?
First of all, I don't really like to suggest to people that I should do a spell for them. And the reason why is because I don't want to upsell anybody. My whole thing is if you feel that you need a spell, I am happy to consult with you, discuss what's going on, and then do the spell. And the first thing I always try to tell people is it's better to do this spell yourself. And I know this is stupid because this is my career and how I get paid and pay my bills. But I always like to tell people, before you give me money to do a spell for you, do the spell for yourself. It's actually more powerful if you do the spell yourself. However, but there's lots of reasons why a person can't do a spell for themselves. Maybe they're afraid to, and then their own fear is going to cancel out the spell even working, or maybe they live with their parents who are very religious and they can't, or a spouse or whatever. There's a myriad of different reasons why a person can't do a spell themselves, in which case I'm happy to fill that role. And so how it works is someone would book a session with me, a spell crafting session. We would use the time on the phone, 15 minutes to an hour, however much time the person feels they need to talk to me. And they would just tell me what's going on, and I sit and I listen to them. I give them sort of a reading in that time. I use my spirits. I use my intuitive abilities. And through that session, I make a determination as to what kind of spell would probably be best for them. Sometimes I have multiple different ones I think could work. And so I'll sort of pitch them the different spells to see what resonates with them the most, what they truly want. Because sometimes a person thinks they know what they want. And so I tell them what the spell is for that. And they're like, oh God, no, I don't want that. I don't want that.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so with the charm bags, now, granted, when you're doing a spell, there are a gazillion different ways to do a spell. But for sanity's sake, through the Green Man, we do 2 different types of spells. One is a candle spell, and the other is a charm bag. And with the candle spell, that's something that I carve for the person. I'll determine what ingredients to use. So I'll take the candle. I like chaos magic, so I create sigils, and I will carve that sigil into the candle, and then I will dress the candle with herbs and oils that I feel will help boost the goal of the spell. And then I can either, if the person lives local, I can leave it at the store. They can pick it up and burn it themselves, which some people like to do. But more often than not, they like me to burn it. So then I bring it into my backyard. I have several altars set up out there that are all protected. So I'll set up an altar and I'll burn it, and I do a whole little ritual around that. I put altar tools down. I take pictures, videos. I send them to the person so that they can see, how it's all laid out. I give them updates throughout the burning of it, because, sometimes the candles explode and I need to tell my client that, So, and then with the charm bags, what I'll do, and like the one that you showed, that symbol on there, that was, I also have Scandinavian roots. So sometimes I use runes in my magic. And so that was a bind rune. And that particular bind rune, if I'm remembering correctly, was for magnetism, to attract something to the person. And so what I would do with a charm bag is, and the difference between the two, just to explain why there's a difference. A candle is more explosive. It's fire. It burns. The candle burns down, and it immediately like sends the energy out, so it's really good if someone needs like immediate action. Maybe you're trying to win a lawsuit, or maybe you're trying to get a job or something like that. Like, boom, it's out. With charm bags, I like to describe those as extended release pills. And so, right. So it works over a longer period of time. And so I'll fill it with herbs, crystals, oils, things like that, whatever I feel is needed for it. On the outside of it, I use my little chaos magic, and I create a sigil for the purpose, and I draw it on the outside. And then I'll take the charm bag. I'll either leave it at Green Man for the person to pick up, or I'll mail it to them if they live far. And I usually tell them, I usually will give people something that they can do, with the charm bag, like, hold it every night for 7 nights or however long, and, fill it with the intention of the spell, like bond with it, stick it under your pillow, stick it in your purse. Depends on what you want. If you're trying to attract money, you want it in your purse or your pocket. If you're trying to,
right. Something relatable.
Exactly. Something relatable. So, yeah.
Okay. Another, I'm going to put that one aside for now. Actually, Joe Fox. Yeah. So can I contact the camel selling my commercial property? Well, you can go ahead and contact, Melissa. Sure. We have her website up there. Okay. So I recently, and I know you conduct seances, things like table tipping and so forth. You talk a little bit about the Ouija board. I recently did my first ever Ouija board session. Okay, we were doing a little bit of filming, and they needed somebody, and it's like, okay, I'll do it. I thought that I was the perfect person to do it, because I've never done it from an empty vessel in many ways, but especially on a Ouija board. So I had no expectations or anything like that. So let's talk Ouija for a quick minute here before I bring George in.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on the use? Because we all know everything attached to it. And, if we start from a place of intelligence where it's like you're opening up doors and portals, you don't know who's going to come through. Somebody evil might come through. I think everybody understands that.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts as somebody who's used it and maybe continues to use it? I don't know.
Well, let me just show you behind me.
And we're off.
So, yeah.
Yes, they're strategically placed to cover it, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's 3 of them in there. They're all piled up. I love Ouija boards. I'm going to be totally honest. I know that there are people who are terrified of them. I've taught several series. I've taught psychic development and mediumship. I've had students who have said point blank to me, if you pull out a Ouija board in class, I'm leaving and never coming back. And, I honor them. If they don't want to use the Ouija board in class, then by all means, I will not use it in class.
Sure.
But, to me, Ouija board is just like every other form of divination. It's just like a pendulum. It's just like tarot cards. It's just like anything else. It's just like runes. It's just another way to glean information from spirit, from entities on the other side. And just like any way that you would try to communicate with someone on the other side, you're gonna wanna protect yourself. You know what I mean? Yes. I love Ouija board.
Okay, fine. So there you go. We've been exposed now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there are a lot of variables in it. And I've said this on the show before, so all of you who heard it, forgive me, but there is nothing in the instructions of how to use a Ouija board that has anything to do with taking it to a dark attic or a cemetery and putting candles around it. We kind of do that for a vicarious thrill.
Yep.
I think, but we impose our will on the whole process sometimes, because so many things, like witches, for example, we have this predetermined idea of what these things are and what they can do. And I understand that people one time I used it and all the lights went on in the house and a big crack of thunder came down. I know people that's happened to. So, I just, a little bit, I like to ask people what their thoughts are on it. And I'm always gratified when people say that they're not terrified from it, but again, I guess intention is everything. Okay. I am going to bring George back in here, take a little break for myself, and we'll be back to wrap things up in a little bit. Melissa, we'll see you soon. And maybe, George, if we can get to some of the other questions, that's fine. Try our best.
Just a few. Again, kudos to our viewers. They are some of the sharpest people, and they really, really dig deep with their questions. You can really appreciate that too. So I'll be getting to that. Before we go any further, though, I need you to give a rundown, not for me, not for the guys, but for our female viewers, a rundown of your jewelry.
Oh, okay.
All those rings, do they have meaning? Do the necklaces have meaning? Do the bracelets have meaning to you?
Literally everything has meaning. So
go for it.
Okay, so wait, I'm like dyslexic here. Okay, so this is black tourmaline with a little bit of hematite. I mean, not hematite. I'm sorry, Herkimer diamond on it.
Ooh.
And so that's just that's protection and strength. And this is a Solomon's there are many seals of Solomon. This is one of them, and it's meant to attract treasure to you. Nice. So I wanted you guys to attract some treasure on this show, of course. I have some Italian blood in me, so I have a little
pepper,
a little horn, a little Italian horn.
Like a jalapeno there. Okay.
It does, I know. It's actually coral. And then this is just your standard quartz, clear quartz, which is just good for like boosting and amplifying any other energy that you're working with.
Okay.
These are 3 keys of Hecate, so I like to keep her close. So those are the necklaces. The rings are sort of a mixed bag. Amethyst is for psychic protection and ability. It's also my birthstone, so I just love it.
Well, let's stop for a second, because as you're going through that, I know the question is going to be, does she have those for sale on her website? So let them know what's available and what they can get from you as well.
Right, of course. Well, I don't have none of these ones are for sale. I do have some. I will right now. My website is on hiatus. I had to put it on hiatus because I was working on a project for several months, but the website is going to come back. And if you don't mind, Trish, I'm going to pop over for one quick second so I can grab something to show them about. Is that okay? I'll be right back.
Yeah, not a problem. I have plenty of music that I can play in the meantime that will keep us entertained. That's
I'm already back. I'm already back. Okay.
all right.
So these are the types of necklaces that I have for sale. It's a mini spell jar, and this one is for self-love and confidence. And then over here we have, and then I just like to do little necklaces with like a little stone in the middle that's like jewelry with intention. So this one is shungite. So lots of people probably know what that is. It's super great for grounding, but I could, I have other things that I put in the center of that as well. So those will eventually back up on my website.
Nice.
When I get back to crafting my jewelry again. I also make wands. So this is a wand that I made.
Well, look at that.
Yeah. And there's 2 of these still available at the Green Man store, and I have tons more that are coming soon. But yeah, so anyway. Oh, and all of these little bracelets. Eventually I will be selling bracelets as well. I haven't gotten those made yet. But each one has a purpose. Like obsidian is good for grounding and get rid of fear and things like that.
Amazing. I'm fascinated by it. I really am. I'm not one to wear not even a watch,
right?
But one of the things that we've talked about time and again when people go out to do paranormal investigating is wearing a St. Christopher medal or a St. Michael and the crucifix. And it's always been the debate: is it the actual items that are really protecting you, or your belief in them? Which again, that's a projection from yourself in that sense. So fascinating stuff. It really is. All right, we're going to do a quick fire round of these questions because we still have another 8 that I need to get through here. So let's jump on these real quick, and then I want to pose a question to you from myself. All right, the first question here from Art Ramon Paintings: can technology enhance the psychic realm? For instance, a brain implant that can replicate the effects of DMT.
I mean, I would say absolutely. Yeah. All you have to do is look at what the Monroe Institute is doing with meditations, guided meditations that can, strengthen and, and that's technology. You're listening to binaural beats and various sounds that can take us outside of ourselves. I've laid on the couch and listened to their stuff and like seen myself float above myself. So I would say absolutely 100%.
Okay. Our good friend, Elise Carlson asks, do you receive impressions about random people in, say, grocery store? And if so, do you tell them?
Not anymore.
Whoops.
Yeah. I have in the past. And before I really understood it all, I would whatever. But I've come to realize that just because you get an impression for someone doesn't mean that they're ready to receive it. And it's better for them to seek you out and find you to get that information.
All right. Here's Michelle Lovell. Question: can you discuss spirit animals? Ooh.
Yeah. Well, I think of spirit animals as like our little spirit, allies, because I don't want to tread upon any Native American practices or appropriation or anything like that. So I think of them as more spirit allies.
Are they familiars? Is that what they refer to?
Okay. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I think of. And, there is a belief that your pets can't be your familiars because, familiars are spirits, but I don't necessarily believe that. My belief is more that the spirit familiar can ride your actual pet. So they sort of coexist together so that you can have a pet that is also a familiar. Some might argue that that's not a wise thing because then, because your spirit allies, your little animals, they take the hits. If someone is trying to harm you or hurt you, they're your first, like one of your.
Really?
Yeah, they're like your shield of protection. So, you know, wouldn't necessarily want your pets to get hurt,
No.
you know, so that's why people don't like to do that. But you don't have to, they don't have to exist in a living animal. They can just be an army of spirit allies around you.
Fantastic. Fantastic answer. Mike Pelletier. By the way, Mike Pelletier is the highest bidder for your home address. So, Mike, I'll give it to you now. It is 666 Rick McCullum Boulevard, Santa Monica, California.
Yep.
Here's a question from Mike. Only the witch who cast the ruins can use her magic. Any truth to this? Or is it just from WandaVision?
Well, you know, don't believe too much in Hollywood witchcraft. You know what I mean? They use little bits of reality and then magnify it to be, you know, conflict and drama and things like that.
Is anybody doing it right in Hollywood, Melissa?
Whew, that's a great question. So, some get close, but I haven't really stumbled on one that is really super accurate, to be honest.
So not The Craft.
The Craft comes very close. I would say insofar as ones that comes probably the closest, but it also has a lot of bombastic stuff in it too.
Of course. Well, yeah, Hollywood.
Yes.
Just our paranormal shows. Look at those.
Right.
Next question is from Joe Fox. Are you ever afraid of someone or something attaching itself to you?
Well, I'm not, but I probably should be. You know, which is not to say that I have an ego or anything, but I kind of, you know, I just go anywhere and everywhere. I'm curious. I like to experience things. You know, I do bring my protections. I have crystals behind me that I bring with me when I do ghost hunts and whatnot. So it's not like I go in completely without protection. Well, anymore.
Right.
I did go to Pompeii without any protection whatsoever, and I brought home an attachment that made me very depressed, and I had to have an exorcism. So, you know, it does happen.
Really?
Yeah.
How bad was it?
I mean, it was bad. Like, I got back from Italy and I couldn't eat. I couldn't work. I'm a writer. I couldn't write. I couldn't do anything. All I wanted to do was sleep. I was just like I was just crying and depressed and mopey and with no reason to be. My God, I just got back from Italy. I should be bouncing off the damn walls, you know? And my friend, she saw me and I was also hiding. I was afraid to like leave my house. I was afraid to like be amongst people.
Isolationist. Yeah.
Totally. I was just like, I don't want to go anywhere or do anything. And my friend, she came by. She's actually one of my mentors, and she's the first person who was like, "You're a medium. Do something about that." And so she came by my house, and she was like, "Just checking in on you. I think you have an attachment, and I think you need an exorcism. So we're gonna schedule a time, and you're gonna come to my office, and I'm gonna take care of you." And her name is Rochelle Evans, and she's freaking awesome. She did she was the first Reiki master I ever knew. And she did the Reiki version of an exorcism and cleared the energy. And I actually saw it like during the thing. And I didn't even, at that time, I was like, Reiki is BS. It's not real. And now I'm a Reiki master, because in that moment, as she was sort of pulling things out of me, I saw around me the person that was attached to me. And I saw as she opened up a portal for that being to ascend and leave me, I saw it happen. I mean, I could paint the picture right now. It was so crystal clear, you know, and it just made me a total believer in that and all of that. So, you know.
Did you do any kind of protection when you went to Casadega? Because I look at that as a whirlwind of chaos.
Oh my God, Casadega. Have you been there?
Yes.
You can feel the energy before you even hit the camp. You know,
there seems to be some sort of a yin and a yang on that land, as almost as if. And yes, I understand that the psychics who live in Casadega, and Casadega is the middle of Florida. If you're heading from Daytona to Orlando, it's like right smack dab in the middle between the two. But you will find a lot of them are almost defensive to a fault, where you
Yes.
don't feel welcome. And I wonder whether or not that also attracts negativity or projects it actually from those people.
Well, I would say a projection. You know, the first time I went there, my dad and I got a little lost, and we were driving along this like little, tiny road. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, we're close. And he was like, what? And I was like, do you feel that? And my dad is not a woo-woo person, but he does feel things too, when he allows himself to. And we both just felt this heavy pressure as if something was trying to push us away.
Yeah.
It was repulsive, not repulsive like it's gross, but repulsive like it was actually pushing us.
A psychic barrier.
It was, yes, it was a psychic barrier, and we had to sort of like push through it just to continue. And as soon as we pushed through it and we got to the camp and I got into the camp, things started to sort of loosen up. And I just kind of like, I just went into myself and just pushed out love. I was just like, I come in peace. I come with love. I mean, no harm to anyone. I judge no one, and as soon as I did that, the vibe changed. But it was, there was definitely like a do not come here vibe.
You're talking about what would be perceived as a general barrier for all.
Yes.
And those who are strong enough can overcome that.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Unbelievable. It really is. I got two more questions I want to get to very, very quickly here. This one may need some explaining unless you're familiar with Cody and Satori and the work that they've been doing. Do you think the energy within each of us plays a big part in all forms of mediumship, like what happens with Satori and Cody?
Well, I'm not super familiar with Satori and Cody, to be honest, but from what I've heard, they play off each other, and
yes,
and then
yes.
There's like knocks sounds,
correct.
Which I, even though I'm not familiar with Satori and Cody, that's straight from the Fox sisters, so the birth of spiritualism, the birth of camps like Casadega and what have you, where in the 1800s there were these sisters, and they were young, and they played off of each other, and they created a language of knocks, and it would knock out like each number of knock would be a different letter in the alphabet, and so that's where that comes from.
Precisely.
And, I would say that absolutely, one thing that I've noticed in my classes, especially the ones that are in person, it happens on Zoom too, but it's not as strong. But my in-person classes, when I'm teaching mediumship, and I teach in a circle, like that's why I call them circles, because everyone's on the same level. We're all one. I notice that my own abilities become stronger when I'm surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing. And my students have told me the same thing, that they notice that when they're in a room with myself and the other students, that their abilities become stronger. So there's definitely something to that. As working with a group, we all build each other up,
Interesting. Our final question, at least right now, from Mr. Joe Fox. Do you recommend, you're going to have to explain this, wearing carnelian? What is carnelian?
Well, carnelian is a crystal, and I'm wearing some right now.
Okay.
I know some people. I don't know what it is. That I don't know. There must be something that I missed out in, maybe on TikTok or something. But I've had a few people ask me this recently, and I've had people tell me that there's something bad about carnelian, or that they can't wear it because it feels weird on them, or they get weird vibes from it. And to each their own. There are all different types of crystals that people can't work with. A lot of people can't even handle moldavite or Libyan sea glass. It's weird to me that carnelian is that, because for me, carnelian, I use it in my Reiki practice. It's really, really works wonders for opening up people's creativity. Things like that. So I don't know.
And as a writer, it's paramount.
Yeah. Yes.
Without
yes.
question.
Very.
Before I'm going to bring Ken back on, because I know he's probably got some follow-up statements with regards to those questions. By the way, the viewing audience, you guys knocked it out of the park, as you usually do. Thank you so much for those questions. So I want to kind of sum this up in a sense, because, again, this is a rare look into spells and witchcraft that I'm still not acclimated to. I'm still not familiar with it as much. So let's take a scenario. You meet me. This is our first time talking to each other, whether it is as you said earlier, it doesn't work as effectively over the internet, over Zoom or over StreamYard, but you meet me. And does it take effect for you to take that first step? If that person is not looking for you and receptive to you, you're going to look at me and say, he needs this, and this is how I can help him. Is that in the direction that you would normally go? And let's work through that scenario with me. If that's true, what would you look at with me and say, this is where we need to take some steps for you?
Okay. So like you've come to me and you want to spell.
No, even we just met each other. We're at a conference.
Okay.
And we just start stirring up a conversation, whatever, but we don't go down this road. But there's some kind of you're getting a feeling off of me that says, he needs help with this, or I can sense this. Is it in the conversation, or is it off my energy?
Oh gosh. Well, I'd say it's a blend of both, know. I always go back to Sherlock Holmes because, there's a lot of that. I love Sherlock Holmes. I've read, tons of the stories, and watched all the movies and TV shows, because there's something to. And I know like other psychics would probably get mad at me for saying this because they want it to all just be energy. But, we have eyes, and some of us can see, not all of us, but, we can smell, and we can, feel, and we can hear,
Elementary senses.
Exactly. So, there's going to be a level of assessment based on our five senses that we have access to. That's going to happen no matter what. You know what I mean? You're going to, see a spot of dirt on a person's shoe and know that, that means something, or, you're going to assess like the types of clothes that they're wearing and the type of jewelry that they have, their accent, how they speak. There's all these different things, and people call that cold reading. And there's a real movement like in the psychic circles to like poo that, look down on it. And I just feel like that's, it's not cool, because if we're going to help people, shouldn't we use every tool that we have in the tool bag? And
we call them triggers. They're triggers.
Yeah. So we use it, and I think it's fair to use it. Now, if you blindfold me and you cover my ears and, you know what I mean? And just like sit me there, and I don't have access to that, I'm still going to get a reading. Because I am going to feel things. I'm going to sense things, I might feel like the chaos that is surrounding you because you have a lot of people there. I might feel like, tiredness, and think, okay, this person, needs an injection, needs a sunstone and some injection of, energy into their life, or, whatever, there's going to be waves of feeling as well,
I would be, I don't want to say terrified, but, you always have those fears. Same reason why I've never been to a psychic. We've had them on the show. We've talked in topics surrounding our lives and our world, but not to say, what's going on and what same situation comes about here. Do I need the help? And if I do I trust it? Enough, or do I trust enough in myself to give away that free will, that opportunity to somebody to assist in this? So I don't know. I'm still working through it, to say the least. But so, Ken, anything that you wanted to add with the questions from our viewers and the discussion that we've had?
There are actually a couple of things, some housekeeping things that I wanted to talk about in the time we have left. First of all, those of you who have contributed to us in Super Chat tonight, thank you so much.
Yes.
One of the things that I will say is, if you decide to do that, we are so grateful, because it helps. It really does help. If you're going to do that and you want it to count, you will have to go to Dead Air Full Spectrum on YouTube. If you send it here, it's just going to disappear into the ether somewhere. You won't lose money, but it won't get to us. So we're set up on Dead Air Full Spectrum. If you want to become a super chatter and help us out, and it goes a long way. It really does. So just a little bit of a heads up there, but we're grateful. The other thing I wanted, go ahead.
In that case, Mike, that address was wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Yeah, right.
Sorry about that.
The other thing I wanted to mention, if you love Melissa as much as we do, and I can tell that you do, not to get too far ahead of us, but you may be seeing much more of her on Dead Air Full Spectrum.
What?
As I said, I don't want to get too far out ahead of our skis here, but we're talking about possibly having her join the stable, and we wish her luck working toward that. It's going to take a few months.
Do you know how expensive she's going to be?
What?
Do you know how expensive she's going to be?
Oh, she's outrageous. God. Please give till it hurts. No. But you're out in California. So it's like if I was doing what you plan on doing, I'd just be kind of walking around in the snow and all bundled up and everything like that. So you definitely have an advantage on that. So that's all I'll say about that right now. But we hope that everything works out because we love her. We love her insights, her personality. And I can see tonight that you do too. So there you go, Melissa. You've got the full endorsement of the Dead Airheads tonight.
Yay!
So we're coming to the holiday time frame for you, Melissa, and you were talking about the rest of this month and all of December. What's on the calendar?
Well, I'm going to go into the mound. We would talk about it in Witch World, and that's, it's the dark time of the year, also, I'm not an expert astrologer, but I'm, this is a secret and I haven't told anybody this yet, but I'm
exclusive. Go for it.
Exclusive. I've decided to finally take the deep dive. I've had people tell me for years that I need to study astrology, and I've just touched the surface of it. But so I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks taking a deep dive on astrology and learning it so that I can start implementing it into my practice more than I already have. So that's what I mean by saying I'm going to go into the mound, and there's this, belief with witchcraft in that you pay attention to the seasons and that you act accordingly. And, even though I'm in sunny California, it is the winter time. And this is that time where you go into your home and you go to the hearth and you go by the light of the fire and you spend time indoors and learn and work on yourself and things like that. So that's the plan. And I already signed up for a class. And also, it's a little bit so that I do know, we are in a Mars retrograde right now. So right now is not a good time to begin projects. But it goes direct on January 12th. So that's when it's to
it's a day after my birthday. That's perfect.
Perfect.
Hey, one of the other things I wanted to mention, Melissa, you can tell about this. Melissa is also an author.
Yes.
And these are some of her works. And help me with it. Saramond. Okay.
That was one of the wizards that was in the tower, I think, in the second Lord of the Rings.
It's very close. It's based on
Saramond is actually a trilogy, so tell them where they might find these, Melissa.
Yeah, so they're all on Amazon right now. In the Now, I've unpublished In the Now because I'm going to re-edit it and I'm going to release a 10th anniversary edition of it. And right now, Essential Science from the Afterlife is in a strange position because the publisher appears to be possibly going under. So they're talking about canceling the book. So I've been trying to tell people to please pre-order the book to prove to the publisher to keep it up and move forward with it.
See, Melissa was right. This is not the time of the season for projects.
Yeah,
okay? Explained it right there.
Bad time.
We are completely out of time. Just a quick heads up, guys. We will not be doing a show. We'll be doing rebroadcast next Sunday for the Thanksgiving weekend. And we wish you guys the most wonderful of holidays. We'll be back the following week. So great guests upcoming too. You definitely don't want to miss it, including some European overseas investigative trips. So we'll be with you. Melissa, don't hang up. Stay with us right now. Guys, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you. You've been watching Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. Have a good night.